Well, hello, Young and the Restless Daily Recap fans. Today's recap, and it's going to cover pretty much from, I'd say, September 10th, because the last recap I did covered through, not September, February 7th was the last recap that I did. So I'm going to start from the 10th, pretty much, and bring it current with what's going on in Genoa City land. Now, what we have is, we have the Valentine's Day uh episode. Sally and Billy were in Valentine's Day. Well, I'm not going to cover episode by episode, but Phyllis was kind of getting jealous that they had gone because she doesn't want Billy involved with Sally. I kind of think somewhere along the line they're going to try to do a triangle with them again. And I hope not, because to me, Phyllis and Billy don't work like that. They don't work at all. But anyway, they have fun in Paris. Phyllis keeps blowing up Billy's phone. She got Daniel to finally agree that he would work at Abbott Communications with them. So she's letting Billy know. He finally calls her and she says, did you get my many messages? He goes, yeah, Phyllis, and I told you I'm going to handle business when I get back. Well, I just needed to let you know that Billy is, I mean, not Billy, Daniel's on board. And he goes, I got that from your message. Great. Now, when I get home, the end of the week, we can discuss it. No, but you need to be really thinking about business now. You need to start coming up with things because I'm working now. I'm having ideas that I want to talk to you about. He goes, Phyllis, you know what? I'm not going to do business right now. I've told you this. I'm on vacation with Sally. Everything will wait till I get home. But and he just pretty much bye Phyllis. Okay. So he and Sally have fun and Billy starts getting these calls from an unknown person at this point. And he's like, yeah, everything's on track. Everything's on track. Uh-huh. You still in? Yeah, okay. And I'm thinking, all right, who's he teaming up with? Who? So we know went to Victor, or Lily went to Victor to get some information on Damien. And Victor wants to repair the relationship. So he's all for, okay, I will try to get you some some information on him. Um, Diane is going to remodel the Abbott home. And what that's going to require is for them to move out of the home. Now, remember, wasn't she doing some minor tweaks and updates? Minor, right? They moved out of the home into February, and this is April 8th, and they still ain't back. They're supposed to be back into the home in the next few weeks. Okay, this chick did a major overhaul, and there is no way that that family should be walking in blind with all of this. What if they don't like it? Because she told Jack, if you don't like the changes, then it'll be put back the way it was. Well, with how long these renovations are taking, look, there is no way that it'll be able to be put back to the way it was and be cost effective, right? With that. So anyway, that's interesting that they've been out of the home that long, but they have. Let's see. So we have what I'm doing, everybody's I'm looking at my app and some of the thumbnails that they have as to what happened because I didn't take notes. I don't really take notes anymore. I just remember the directions that the writers have gone with the characters. So they have decided pretty much to do a Squid Game like scenario with Sharon and Phyllis. Now, if you don't know what the Squid Games are, it was this Asian show that went viral. Boy, I loved me some Squid Games, right? Squid Games 2, nowhere near as good as Squid Games 1, but you can see it on Netflix. But anyway, um, you have to do different games and different tasks to get to another level. And the way this person did it was he kidnapped both Sharon and Phyllis, put them in this room, okay, locked them in this room. And it was like an abandoned, you couldn't tell what it was. It almost looked like an abandoned office room, one room, okay, had a couch, had a chair, a table with a microwave, water, just some minor supplies, canned goods for food. So they didn't really have hot food, just canned goods, but you could heat that up in the microwave if you wanted. And a coffee pot, a bookcase with random stuff, board games, books in it, right? So we're wondering, okay, now what's going on here? Who would do this? And they would hear this voice coming from this box on the top of the wall, and the voice was distorted, where they got the hello, this is your mission, just a very muffled voice, so you couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. And they had to solve these riddles. And pretty much they were trying to fight for their freedom, allegedly. They could get out of here if they completed the game. But then those games turned deadly, okay, to where Phyllis was poisoned, and he would give them riddles. And the riddle that you had to figure out would be what would save her. So Sharon did figure it out. But what happened is Phyllis was second. Sharon was the first one put in mortal jeopardy, mortal danger. And Phyllis had to save her. Phyllis had to end up doing CPR on Sharon because he gave her something that stopped her from breathing. And they never truly got into what he gave Sharon. How did she get sick or stop breathing? But they did determine the person keeping them captive was coming in at night because different things would appear in the room, different food, you know, some water, just different things. And my whole thing is, if I'm held captive, y'all, do you think I'm really sleeping? I'm absolutely not sleeping hard enough that I'm not going to hear somebody come through that front door. I don't care how slowly they unlock the lock. I'm going to hear it. And they going to tiptoe past the couch where I'm sleep at to put something over across the room. That made no sense. That honestly made zero sense. I could buy it if it was a room that had one of those old-fashioned dumb waiters to where stuff was lowered down to their room and all they had to do was lift up a door and some new stuff would be in it, right? But the dumb waiter would definitely be way too small for them to even think a human body could fit in it. Just enough for a food tray, right? They should have done that because reality that somebody was getting in at night was very unbelievable. And then what happened with Phyllis, she was poisoned when she drank the water, and she was getting in this immense pain, curled over in the couch, and Sharon was trying to figure out the riddle to save Phyllis. And finally she figured out that there was one bottle of water on the table with a circle dot on that, on the cap of the water. So now she had to convince Phyllis to drink it, believing that that was the antidote. So Phyllis was in so much pain. Finally, she just gave in because she was thinking, "No, you are trying to kill me because they're enemies, Phyllis and Sharon." Well, finally, throughout this ordeal, and they didn't say how many days, but it lasted days, and their families were all worried. Daniel and Summer were the first to get worried because Phyllis was supposed to meet him for dinner. I mean, breakfast that very next morning. She never showed for breakfast. She was a no call, no show. And that was not like Phyllis to just not call them, not text them, not do anything. Mind you, Summer and Phyllis are staying right there at the GCAC. So it's not like they aren't staying far from each other. So they were worried. And ultimately, through this whole saga, finally, Mariah starts getting worried. Like, wait a minute. Sharon didn't show up to work. She didn't show up here at the coffee house. I haven't heard because Nick is like, Nick was the first to get worried about Sharon. He's like, Mariah, have you talked to Sharon? He and Sharon were supposed to have met at Crimson Lights the next day after Valentine's. And no Sharon. And Mariah's like, no, I haven't heard from her since before Valentine's. Maybe she's at Cassidy first. So Mariah calls Cassidy first. Sharon hasn't been there. And she goes, because they were at the coffee house, so they knew she wasn't there. And Esther was getting worried. She goes, has anybody talked to Sharon after the days were starting to go by? Because she's not returning any of my calls. Normally she checks in on the coffee house, right? So they get Chance involved in all of this, and the two families from Faith to Mariah and Nick, they have to get Summer and Daniel involved, and Summer and Mariah go at it because each are accusing each other's mother of doing something nefarious to each other, and their money was Faith is like, your mother has been very vocal that she was coming after our mother. She goes, oh, you mean for framing my brother for murder? Uh, and it was the body she disposed of. So yeah, my mother was upset, but my mother was not as upset enough to kidnap your mother and then disappear off the grid herself. No. So then it finally became obvious that something happened to them because Chance did find some surveillance. Chance found something, goodness gracious. Um, and it was a white van with no windows. It showed where Phyllis was parked. It showed Phyllis's car going in, parking. I forget where her car was parked. And the van went in after. And then soon that van drove away. And then it showed where Sharon's car was in the parking lot of Cassidy first, but it showed uh, a van driving away from that location as well. So they figured whoever was driving that van had both of those women. Now we're thinking, okay, who could this be? Who could this be? Who could this be? Right? Well, and this is what I don't like. They finally showed Tracy and Al because Tracy was back in New York with her pub. She goes back and forth. She always has. Alan was doing his book tour, giving lectures and all of this. Um, some international, some in the States. So even they were running into each other between engagements, right? So they both happened to be in town. And Jack and Diane were happy. And this is where Diane was talking about getting Tracy on board with her the changing up the house. So Tracy said, you know what, I'm all for getting a little sprucing up. And that's pretty much a week after that, because Alan was living with them, but they all ended up staying at the GCAC. So when I'm looking at Alan, I thought, why does his hair look a mess? Alan's hair was more polished to me. And it was more not messy, but not the way it normally is. And he was just gushing over Tracy, and she was gushing over him. And he decides that he's going to propose to Tracy. And she was just like, wait, what? And Jack and Diane happened to be sitting there, and they figured that's what he was going to do. And he goes, wait, Tracy, wait. You know, I have to go get something. Just the to me erratic, over emotional way he was reacting, because Alan was more reserved. Yes, he showed happiness. He showed he was happy with Tracy. But this was different to me. And I thought, that better not be Martin. That was in the back of my mind. That better not be Martin. Why won't they let Tracy have some happiness? Okay. So he goes and we're still trying to figure out who's the captor. Well, his phone, the alarm went off. Now Sharon and Tracy and Phyllis had been in there for days now. Mind you, that one room had no bathroom. See, soap operas never talk about stuff. The logistics of being held captive somewhere. Never. No bathroom, no shower. You know, that room smelled like a hot mess. Just a hot, steaming pile of mess. And you know what I mean, right? Oh my goodness. I said, well, where's the bathroom? Mm-mm. So they were now at the point they're saying, okay, you know what? Because Sharon had Phyllis had revived Sharon. Sharon had revived Phyllis. They're like, okay, this person's going to kill us because each task they give us is more dangerous. And they have figured out that the person was coming in at night. So they said, okay, you know what, Phyllis? We're going to have to catch him when they come in. So then they decide, no, just like they're talking to us, they're watching us, right? And then during this time, Billy is now back. First, he was thinking Phyllis was ghosting him. And then after Nick would talk to him, he fully believes Daniel would talk to him too. Something was wrong because Phyllis would not drop radio silence. And what the person had them do is he gave them burner phones, two different burner phones, told them they each could call one family member and they better reassure them that they were okay. Otherwise, they would not be getting out of there. So Sharon called Nick, Phyllis called Summer, saying, "Oh, I'm just out of town. I just needed to clear my head." As Phyllis says, "Oh, I'm out of town trying to get some business, lock in a business contract for Abbott Communications. The reason why I'm not calling from my phone is I lost my phone. I had to get this phone. But don't worry, I'll be home soon in a few days." Sharon tells Nick, "Oh yeah, I had to go. I decided to go to a spa and just take some time to myself. I lost my phone. This is a burner phone." And he goes, "Okay, okay, now are you going to call Faith and Mariah?" "No, no, listen. I want you to talk to the girls and tell them I'm okay." And he goes, "Well, okay." And he knew that was something strange because they just got Sharon back from being held captive by Jordan and Ian. So she definitely would have wanted to reassure them herself. So that was one thing that made him feel uneasy. And Phyllis said, "Are you going to call Daniel?" And she goes, "No, you tell your brother what I said." And Summer's like, huh. So needless to say, they Sharon and Phyllis decided, you know what? We're going to mess up this room and we're going to find the camera where he's watching us like lab rats. So they trash the room, they find the camera, they disable the camera. Now, this is when Alan slash Martin is deciding to kick his plan up, faster, which is why he proposed to Tracy. And he ran out and he got her a ring. Well, he stops at the park and then it shows him looking on his phone, looking at the security camera of Sharon and Phyllis in that room. So that's the first time we had a clue that it was Alan doing this slash Martin. And I tell you what, I bet you they're going to do split personality, just like the Ashley situation. And it's like, come on, Young and the Restless. You can't think of nothing original. What is that all about, right? You got to rinse and repeat the same old thing. So, needless to say, they've decided they were going to try to um, break out the room. But in the meantime, Alan sent a text message to Billy, and it was a riddle, some kind of riddle, and then click on the link. And Billy went to Nick, called Nick over. And Nick came over and he goes, "I got this crazy text out the blue." uh, about Sharon and Phyllis, and it's some riddle, crazy riddle. And then there's a link they want me to click on, but I didn't click on the link, right? So Nick says, okay, well, let's click on it. So Billy clicks on it, and it shows the camera showing Sharon and Phyllis. It was a link to the closed circuit camera, right? So they're looking and they go, there's that Sharon and Phyllis. Okay, so they are together, but it was a one-way feed. So what they did was they showed it to Chance, or actually, I think the link expired. They just told Chance what they saw, right? That they are alive. They don't know the timestamp on it, but it did look like it was in real time, but they couldn't 100% vouch for that. So, okay, now Martin gets back slash Alan, and he proposes to Tracy. Jack and Diane they gave them privacy. And of course she says yes. And oh, they're so happy. And she couldn't wait to tell uh Diane and Jack. And so Martin says something else he says. And now he also um runs and gets something. But see, what he saw was Tracy, and well, he saw that they disabled the camera. And he told them bad sportsmanship, ladies, over the screen. And they're like, bad sportsmanship? We're tired of playing your game. This is our life. They're blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. So now he's still back doing his thing. Chance and Adam, not Adam, Chance and Billy are trying to figure things out, and Nick. And so Billy also gets an address text to him. So Nick looks up the address. Why Alan decided to communicate with Billy, I don't know. But they look up the address, and it's an abandoned psychiatric clinic on the way outskirts of town. So Chance finds that out too, or they give the information to Chance. No, no, no. Chance narrowed it down through other means. I forget how Chance found out, because when Nick and Billy showed up, Chance is like, what are you guys doing here? Or no, they gave the information to Chance. And Chance says, you guys stay here. We're going to get a search warrant. I'm doing it the right way so we could get into this clinic, and I will give you an update. That's what it was. And Chance and Billy and Nick were kind of like, look, we ain't sitting here, because we all know Chance will wait around for things to be done the right way, and it could take forever. So now Nick and Billy are on their way. And then they show up, and Chance is like, I told you all not to come. He goes, we are not going to sit here. They're trying to look through, and we're going to just break the window. No, he goes, we're waiting for the building superintendent or the property manager to come and unlock the door. He's on his way, but he doesn't live close. They were getting antsy, and bottom line, the guy comes, and somebody's changed the locks to the front door. He hadn't been out there in so long, he don't even know when that was done, which is what Alan had done. Changed the locks, no security alarm going off to let the property manager know, because in order to change those locks, he definitely had to do some movement, right, everybody? So, needless to say, he couldn't get in. So Nick says, you know what? I'm breaking the glass. Oh, he's gonna break the glass with something, and Chance is like, knock yourself out, Nick. It's bulletproof glass. you know, and Nick looks at him. So Chance is like, we're going to get in through the lock. So I think they had something to break the actual, door mechanism lock. Chance either shot it. I don't think he shot it. I think they used something to break into it. Right. So they get into the building, And now they just don't know where the women are. Well, now things are really heightening because Sharon and Phyllis had, while Chanston were still outside, they were trying to jimmy the lock to get out of the room. Okay. Now I'm saying, oh, really? Well, Sharon, you got this. Because when you wanted to break into Daniel and Heather's apartment, you sure did. I don't know what you use, a hairpin? You use something. You good at Jimmy and locks. So Jimmy this one. Well, of course, she and Phyllis couldn't open that lock. Of course not. And what it did, Alan and Tracy were spending the night together and then blissful bliss. And that triggered a mechanism. And Alan's phone was chiming. Chimes, attempted security breach clinic, fail safe measure enacted, right? So Tracy kept saying, even the night before when they're celebrating and having champagne, Alan, your phone keeps going off. He goes, oh, just don't even worry about that. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about the woman that I love said yes. So, and it just captured Tracy's attention. Well, by next morning, Alan's phone still periodically would another notification, and Alan was in the bathroom. Now, my thing is mastermind, kidnapper. You knew why your phone was chiming. Why wouldn't you just silence your phone? I didn't understand that, everybody. So he's in the bathroom, phone's going off, and Tracy's like, oh, he tells her some story that his identity was stolen. He thinks somebody hacked his phone. He was going to try to go get a new phone. So he keeps getting these notifications that he don't even know where they're from. So she's like, oh, he goes, I'm going to go get a new phone tomorrow. That's how she kind of bought it. He still should have silenced his phone, stupid. So she looks at it and she goes, security breach clinic? Hmm, well, that's odd. Fail safe enacted. Huh. Alan comes out. He goes, what do you think you're doing? And she looked at him. And then she's like, your phone kept going off. And I was just picking it up. I think she said to either turn it off. And she goes, and I saw these texts. You're right. I mean, something about a clinic and fail safe enacted. He goes, what I told you, Tracy, they have nothing to do with me. That's why I'm going to get a new phone. And he takes the phone and it kind of scares her. He didn't like want to push her down and take the phone, but his whole demeanor changed. And she's thinking, like, okay, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just going to turn it off because your phone has been going on, the notifications since last night. And so he changes the subject and says he wanted to take her to breakfast. But then he says, you know what, Tracy? I have an idea. She says, what? He says, let's go to Paris. And she said, Paris? Wait, why? Because there's something I want to show you there. And I would really like us to get married in Paris. We could go and search some venues so that it could be perfect for you. And she said, well, okay. And then she got all happy again and, distracted. So he leaves and he goes, let me just take care of some details and I'll call you. So she's talking to Jack. He runs into Jack and Diane and says they're going to go to Paris and they're going to check out some venues because Alan wants to get married in Paris. And Jack is like, okay, well, all right. She goes, I hope you all come. He goes, anywhere you get married, I'm going to come, Tracy. So Diane, I mean, Tracy was with Jack And it was later that day, they run into each other again. She hadn't been able to reach Alan. And so she's a little puzzled. And then she gets a call from Alan while Jack is sitting there with her saying, "Oh, I got the last flight to Paris on a plane and I leave in 10 minutes. Um, Meet me in Paris because there's something I want to get prepared for you, a surprise." So she hangs up. She goes, "Okay." And Jack is like, "What's the matter, Tracy?" And she says, Jack, I don't know. Something's off. Alan is on a plane to Paris right now. And Jack says, "By himself without you?" She goes, "Yeah." Hmm. And then she told Jack about the his identity or information being hacked with what was happening on the phone and what she saw. And then somehow Kyle comes down and he sees the engagement ring and she's talking to Kyle. Now, mind you, this portion of the story, Phyllis and Sharon, remember I said they were trying to get out. Well, when the failsafe tripped on, it leaked gas into the room. So now gas is filling their room. Phyllis is over there trying to cover it up, and she's right there at the gas. Versus, okay, chick, gas is seeping in. If you haven't covered it up in 10 seconds, don't be right there by the pipe trying to come on now. So Phyllis was succumb to more of the gas than Sharon because Sharon was at the door banging on it. And Sharon says, "Wait, Phyllis, I hear something. I hear something." And at this point, not Nick, Billy, Chance were out, and another cop were outside doors banging on doors. And they go, "Sharon, Phyllis." And Sharon's like, "Nick, Nick." And she's banging and they go, "They're in here, they're in here." So they said, Chance says, "Stand back. I'll shoot the lock off." And Sharon says, "No, no, there's gas seeping in here. Hurry, Phyllis." Because Phyllis, at this point, Sharon got her away from the gas pipe and was trying to drag her, but Phyllis had passed out. She couldn't even make it back to the door. So Sharon's trying to cover her mouth. And so then Nick says, "Okay, just stand back, stand back." And of course, it's Nick who has to kick the door in Nick Newman fashion. Get in, and oh, the guys are like, "Oh, the gas." And she goes, Get Phyllis. She inhaled more of it than me." So they get Phyllis and they get the ladies out because there was no way to turn off the gas. So they get everybody out of that room, right? So now the ladies are saved, which is yet why now Alan's on the plane. Okay. So they take both to Sharon's house and Chance is there and they're questioning what happened. So they tell the whole story. And um the next day, Summer is told the story. Or even that night, Summer, they call her mother. She comes to her mother, and just like Cassie, I mean not Cassie, Mariah and Faith. Um, so they hear the whole story. Summer the next day tells Kyle the story. And that's why when Kyle is talking to Jack and Tracy and he gets the story about the engagement, he was saying, "Wow, that is so interesting," and blah, blah, blah. And then Jack says, "Any news on Phyllis?" Or Tracy may have even said, "Any news on Phyllis?" Because everybody knows that they have been missing, right? Kidnapped, possibly. And he goes, "Yeah, they were found. I just talked to Summer and some abandoned psychiatric clinic on the outskirts of town." And Tracy is thinking, right? They had been held captive there for days. And he was telling the story from what he heard. So he leaves and it's bugging Tracy. Well, the next day, she's telling Jack her suspicion. She goes, "Something's not right, Jack. And this is bothering me." And she goes, "What if the man I am engaged to, I don't even know?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "What if this is Martin?" She's saying, Jack, something isn't adding up. Even with his actions, they're not my usual Alan actions. And I'm like, okay, she's putting it together. So he's starting to believe her. They bring Chance into it. So now they're going to be looking in to Alan, but Alan's in Paris. So they come up with a plan to get Alan back in Genoa City. Jack calls him and says, look, I know you wanted to marry my sister in Paris, but it would mean so much to Tracy because it's an Abbott family tradition that, we get married at the house, or the reception at the house. And it would be really great if we could, the house is being remodeled. It'll be perfect to have the wedding there as an unveiling and blah, blah, blah. So Alan is like, anything for my Tracy. So he says he'll come back. So they're expecting him to come back, but now Tracy is all worried as to what if the wrong man survived the fall. So they're going to, Ashley's supposed to be coming to town. So they're going to talk to Ashley about it. But, my whole thing is, I don't think the wrong man survived. I think Alan has taken on his twin brother's personality. Yeah, split personality. They're going to do that. Out of the guilt of, you both falling out that window and your twin brother dies. Their psyche watch. That's what's going to have happened. Because I don't think the bad one survived and the good one died. Um, so anyway, that's where we are with that. Alan is on his way back to town. As a matter of fact, I think in today's episode, and today is April the 8th, I think he's going to come through the door today. I saw scenes for this week. He's coming back to town. So that's the Phyllis, Sharon, Tracy story. No other real stories have dominated aside from that one. We've got Damien, of course, is coming along with accepting Nate as his brother. And they end up, Amy, Nate, the doctor that he refers her to, gets her into this treatment, this trial, or is actually just going to run tests on her, but end up, Amy undergoes treatment. So Nate and Damien go to Chicago to be with Amy. So they were gone for a few days. And Lily goes to Victor, um, saying she wanted information on Damien. And Victor, is getting information. Come to find out, no, Damien is not rich. He does not own those companies. It's he runs the companies. And it's for a Aristotle Dumas. And now everybody ramping into this week, every single episode, that man's name is mentioned. I'm so sick of it. Come to find out, Valentine's Day, which is February, that's who Billy was talking to on the phone. And Victor has Michael looking more into Aristotle because Victor's never seen him. He's come up against him throughout the years. He says they're kind of like financial rivals. Uh, Aristotle would find out a company Victor really wanted to acquire, and he would try to acquire it, and they would be in like a little battle. He goes, some he won, some I won, you know, but I've never been able to see him or know who he is. He says, and for the simple fact that he's interested for some reason in the Winters family, because what Michael found out is Aristotle had given Damien a dossier on Lily, Devon, Hamilton Winters well before Nate reached out to him. So he says that means Aristotle is looking into Hamilton Winters. And Victor was kind of like, he's like, I am not about to let him take that company from them, right? But now, truth be told, he's actually after Chancellor. That's truth be told. He is after Chancellor. He wants to take that from Victor And he told Billy he's made this deal that he'll give it back to Billy. Now, mind you, Jack gave Billy all this money to start up this company. And Phyllis, even though she's in a very delicate off head space, she needs to work. She needs to believe in something positive. Because Phyllis is handling the aftermath of the ordeal more traumatically than Sharon. Because look, Sharon has gone through a lot in this year. Just a few months ago, she was chained to a pipe underground, right? So this was almost like a walk in the park to Sharon. At least she had somebody she was with this time, you know? But Phyllis is just, she's a nervous wreck. She's a hot mess. But Nick had an idea. He told Summer, we're gonna put them together. So he talked Phyllis into coming to the coffee house where Sharon was and let them talk. And what it ended up, they ended up kind of bonding because they ended up bonding, being stuck together, having to save each other's lives. So they decided they would call a truce, you know, and lean on each other through this recovery phase, right? Um, and that's the first time ever in history that those two have been uh comforting each other. So, needless to say, he's told Billy that he wants to right that wrong. And Billy told Sally, but actually he told Phyllis first, because Phyllis is like, no, something else is up with you, Billy. I could tell. And then he goes, okay, what if I told you we have a chance to get Abbott Chancellor back? And Phyllis looks at him. She says, I thought you'd given up on this. You promised me that you had given up on this whole Chancellor Victor vendetta. Well, do you know a name Aristotle Dumas? See, there we hear it again. And she goes, I've heard of the name, but no one's ever seen him. Isn't he this elusive billionaire? And he goes, he reached out to me and he admired my accomplishments and, you know, me starting up a new company. So he's going to help me get Abbott Chancellor back. And Phyllis says, Billy, tell me you're not. Please tell me you're not. You had what you wanted. You had the money to start up something for you. And you're going to go down this road. Billy, you don't know this person. Why would a billionaire offer to get a company back and just give it to you, Billy? I know, but that's what he said. And no, I deserve. And she was just like, I can't go down this road with you. I can't. I had hope. My son had hope. And now this is going to be a disaster. And I don't want to be involved in the with a disaster. So he ends up telling Jack because Jack was coming over to sign over the rest of the money he was giving him, investing in him. And he told Jack how Aristotle Dumont reached out to him saying that he could help him. He was going to help him get Chancellor back. And Jack looked at him. He goes, wait a minute, Billy. I'm investing in your new company, not in your quest to go. He goes, no, no, I just told you, Jack. It was a tempting offer, but I'm not taking him up on it. And Jack's like, okay, now that's good to hear, which is a lie. Billy was lying to him, 100% lying. So Jack, of course, believes his brother, signs the rest of the money, and Billy ends up telling Sally and said Phyllis is against it, and Sally's like, but Billy, think about everybody's telling him, why would this billionaire put out possible millions to get a company back for you and just hand it to you? with no strings attached. Sally said, "My fear, Billy, is you're going to lose it all." Billy, of course, is Billy and won't listen to anybody. So now, wrapping up this recap, Amy's treatment, she's recovering. So we all know that woman was never going to die. Victor is still on his plan to break up Kyle and Claire, which I'm so sick and so over it. This last go around yesterday, he tried to enlist, first, he tried to push Summer into making a playback for Kyle, which Summer was, because Summer now has feelings. She admitted to Chance, yes, she does have feelings for Kyle because they have a child together and they've been in each other's lives for decades. And, Sally is the wrong, Claire is the wrong person for him. And oh, God. So that pretty much her and Chance are done. They're just going to be friends. And, but Kyle doesn't want Summer. But Victor was telling Summer, "You're a family. You need to be a family," right? So now he's approached Audra, told Audra he would give her her dream job. All she had to do was name it. She just had to seduce Kyle back into the bed and get proof so it could break up Claire and Kyle. That chick is considering it, everybody. Unbelievable. Which would blow her and Nate's relationship to smithereens. Now, mind you, Holden and her, they did have a past in LA, but she's not interested in Holden, but he's still definitely interested in her. So to me, what's going to happen, she's going to do what Victor wants. She's not going to end up with nothing. He never gives people what he promises them. We all know that. And she should too, but she's stupid. And then once she does, it'll break up Kyle and Claire temporarily. And Nate will definitely break up with her. And then her and Holden will have some kind of thing. I see how they're gonna mix that all up. Ugh. But that's about it. That's about it for the past ever since February. Nothing really, really major anywhere else. Lily is on a warpath that Damien is bad. Damien's bad. And initially he looked bad, but I kind of think they're gonna weave the story around to where now this whole Aristotle Dumas is in play with everything and calling the shots. And we'll see where that's going to go. So I'll be back in another month or so with another daily recap of The Young and the Restless.